I'm David Groninger in Seattle, Washington. It's a rainy and windy night. It's December 10th, 2015. It's a Thursday night. I just came back from a bike ride, and now it's time to give my 10-minute message. Each day in the morning, I ask myself the question, what could I say in a 10-minute message that might help 10 million people? And I come up with ideas, and then I pick one of the ideas, and I decide to do a talk on it. I set the alarm clock for 10 minutes so I can train myself to keep it short. Well, the idea that I came up with today is one that I've thought about for a long, long time, and it's simply this. Well, I call it do the math. Do the math. And it's this. Have you thought to realize that there are maybe a million people in any given country who are in the military, but there's only one guy who's the diplomat, the foreign diplomat or the ambassador for the other countries. So here's a million people ready to fight and only one guy trying to make peace. Now when I say do the math, does that sound a little bit illogical? Wouldn't it be better if you had a million people that were the diplomats and only one guy that wants to fight? This way you have so many people who are working things out, who are doing the nonviolent communication, the compassionate communication, getting along with each other, working out their problems, listening, understanding where the other people are coming from, looking to find solutions. When you have this many ambassadors, a million ambassadors here and a million ambassadors there, but only one guy in each side who wants to fight, wouldn't that be a beautiful, wonderful world? Because in all these ideas and creative solutions and creative thinking that these million peace-loving diplomats or ambassadors, all the ideas they would come up with, they will come up with enough ideas that'll work out. They can, be in harmony, these two nations. So obviously it sounds crazy and it sounds illogical because we're so used to, the way things have been. But just because the way things have been are that we have a million people in the army and one guy is the ambassador, doesn't mean it has to be that way. Part of the way we change the world is start thinking about it a little bit differently. So even if for the next 10 or 20 years there's still going to be a million people in the army in one country and only one ambassador, start thinking about a million ambassadors and only one guy. Just start thinking that way. And here's an action step that you can take if you'd like to. Become a volunteer ambassador to whatever country you want to be. And anytime you write emails or send a letter or maybe even travel and to visit that country, wear a little name tag saying that you're a volunteer ambassador. Nobody has to give you this title. You gave it to yourself. You're a citizen of a country. You're a citizen of planet Earth. And anything you do to bring about more understanding, more positive communication, to understand better where these people are coming from in the country that you're visiting, and to give them a better understanding of the people that you represent. This is a good thing. This is long-term thinking. If, 100 years ago, people would have thought this way, there would not have been World War I, there would not have been World War II, there would not have been the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and any other wars, because people would not have had to settle their disagreements by millions of people killing millions of people. They would have settled their disagreements by communicating about it. Now, impractical, of course, it might seem that way, but start thinking about it that is the practical way, and very impractical is the way when you've got a million people ready to fight and only one guy trying to make peace. That's the impractical way. So think your way out of it. In other words, be a visionary, and obviously, no country and the people running that country feel very secure if you have a little guy talking about the fact that there's too many people in the army and not enough people trying to make friends, because a part of the security of every guy that leads the country is having a big army. So go about this diplomatically also. Use your diplomatic consciousness. Use your compassion in communicating and understand the way of the military mindset as well. so that you're not, hurting their feelings and yet still getting the job done. If these million people that are in the Army and one guy that's the ambassador, if you had only just recruit just one guy out of the Army and to be your ambassador friend or a teammate, now you've got two ambassadors and only, 999,000 or whatever, just less than 1 million people that are in the Army. So it's not going to hurt the Army that much, but just think about it. You've doubled the amount of people working for peace just there. If every nation just reduced their military by only 10%, they would still have 90% of the military. But if they reduced the military by just 10%, and they hired those 10% of the people that are in the military to just work on as an ambassador, you would have literally thousands of people who are ambassadors or diplomats on each side. And think of all of the wonderful solutions that they would come up with. And that's just reducing the military population by just 10%. And so these are ideas to think about. When you know somebody who's getting out of college and they're very interested in a career in the military, you might suggest to them, it's a lot more unusual, and you might get a little bit more fame or recognition by instead of going into the military, go into the diplomatic service instead. You'll still, be involved with different countries. You'll still be working out issues and problems. You'll still be representing freedom of speech. You'll still be working to represent, protecting your country. And it's still a heroic thing, but you just won't get to go to military parades and get recognized by all that kind of stuff. However, maybe that's another idea too. Maybe they ought to allow diplomats to be in these military parades, and then bit by bit they will get more recognition. So the first military parade, once you have 10% less on the military, would have just 90% of the regular people that would go on that parade and 10% of the people in the diplomatic force. So think about all these people that are on both sides of the street watching this big parade. Isn't this going to be a little bit of a positive promotion of the idea of this compassionate communication? It's going to be a little bit of an idea. And what if in another 10 or 20 years from now, they could reduce it by another 10% and only 80% of the people in the military are still there, and now you have 20% of the people working toward peace. Now you have 80% that want to fight and kill, and just 20% that want to communicate and listen and be patient and take time and to sacrifice and to work toward toward a common solution without the violent part of it. Maybe another 20 or 30 years after that, the armies could be only 70% of their strength, and then you'd have 30% in the diplomatic force. But likely at the time when you only had just 5% in the diplomatic people and 95% in the military, that 5% would probably be able to do the job of creating world peace. That's how little you really need of human understanding. But for the time being, start thinking about it in terms of 1 million people working for peace and only one guy in each country wanting to do the fighting. So I call that, doing the math. It is kind of sad when I think about some of my heroes in history who have been people that represented peace who got killed, like Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King, Abraham Lincoln, even Jesus, and John F. Kennedy. These are people who were promoting things. They wanted the little guy to win. They wanted better rights for everybody. They wanted more freedom for more people. And they were fairly peaceful types of people themselves, and yet they got assassinated. So the way of the diplomat or the way of the ambassador, it's not necessarily an easy way. And as a nobody ambassador like me, or that maybe you might be, you're not going to have a high enough profile for anybody to want to assassinate you. But people will, maybe they'll ridicule you, They may say that you're unpatriotic, wanting peace rather than wanting the military. They might accuse you of being weak, that strength comes from fighting and hurting other people, and it is a sign of weakness to sit there and be patient and to listen. You might be accused, well, what do you know? I certainly cannot be accused of going too much over my time limit. That's my 10-minute talk, and now I'll just sum up. This talk is called Do the Math. Every country has a large number of people in the military, and I use the number 1 million just to mean a lot of people. But some countries, smaller countries, only have 100,000 people in the military. Larger countries maybe have 2 million people or many, many hundreds of thousands. Some small countries maybe only 50 or 60,000. But the idea is that each country only has a small number of people who work in the diplomatic part. And even though I said there's like one diplomat or one ambassador, it's usually, I know, a group of people, but it's a much smaller group, usually less than 1% of the total population of the military people. Plus the amount of money that the government spend in financing these two different operations, the amount of money that goes into the military and all the industry and the amount of taxes people pay to support this is probably 100 times, if not maybe 1,000 times more than the amount of money that goes toward paying the diplomats. So when I say do the math, I mean wake up to a new age. Wake up to the future. There's going to be a time down the road that I believe will actually reach the point that, you know, for every one person that wants to fight something out, there are at least 100 people that want to communicate about it, that want to understand and work out, you know, win-win solutions without people getting their brains blown out, you know. And so my talk today is called Do the Math, and it's to invite you to be a volunteer diplomat to whatever country you want to be, whatever country you like. Just choose to be a diplomat. And anytime you send an email to somebody who lives in that country, you maybe know somebody on Facebook in that country, seek to understand that person a little bit better and give them a bit of some praise for something that is noteworthy of their culture. You know, something that's a benefit that this culture has brought to the world, value they have brought to the world. Acknowledge the person for this and saying, hey, you know what? I really think that's so neat that you're from a country, you know, like if it's Switzerland, you know, that's famous for making these great Swiss watches or Swiss cheese or Swiss chocolate or something. Give some compliment and build the people up. Tell them that you appreciate something that's come from their long culture. So it's do the math. Start visualizing, you know, 1 million diplomats and 1 soldier in every country, rather than 1 million soldiers and 1 diplomat. And be a volunteer diplomat. That's my message tonight. Well, this is David Groninger in Seattle, Washington, saying thank you.